Scrimmage at Ohio State, including an update in the QB battle between Devin Brown and Will Howard, plus Alabama, Georgia, and more news and notes from across college football after the stinger. Hello and welcome to episode 30 of Good Morning College Football. I'm Nicholas Ian Allen of CFB Winning Edge and CampusToCanton.com. Thank you for joining us this morning, April 1st, which of course it is April Fool's Day. So everybody keep your head on a swivel. I am not clever enough to put together any sort of good April Fool's jokes here. And most of the information that we are going to discuss was collected over the weekend, so prior to the calendar changing to April 1st. So I think we're going to be able to trust all of this information that we will discuss today, which does, of course, include updates on the Ohio State quarterback competition, as well as several other standout players, including true freshman five-star wideout Jeremiah Smith, who is just continuing to generate huge hype ahead of his true freshman campaign. But first and foremost, thank you for joining us today. If you are joining us live, we very much appreciate it. If you are catching a replay on YouTube, or if you're checking in there, we very much would appreciate your support by subscribing to the Campus to Canton YouTube channel. We also would be very appreciative if you consider joining us at CampusToCanton.com, where you can join for as little as $2.99 per month, get access to a wide range of written content, tools, data on the site. CFF rankings are coming very soon. Mine won't be posted there immediately. I've been wrapped up in some other things, unfortunately, but hope to add my opinion to the mix there eventually. But fortunately, the much smarter CFF folks like Jared Palmgren, Nate Marquise, Chris Moxley, Ethan Sowers, and the rest of the team there is Chris K. I'm probably forgetting somebody, but all those guys are doing great work behind the scenes, and do check out those rankings coming soon. But also, if you're interested in joining us at the All-22 or C2C Winning Edge tier, we would, of course, appreciate that as well. That includes access already to our 2024 returning production database, a wide range of stats and information, who's coming back, who's not, transferring in, transferring out across all 134 FBS teams. We've had a lot of great input from our members since publishing that a couple of months ago, trying to keep it as up to date as possible, try to catch any news that is coming out from the transfer portal or some guys retiring, medical issues, things like that. It's tough to keep track of, but fortunately we have a lot of folks who are willing to pass any information along that we might miss, but we do a pretty good job, I think, of trying to stay on top of that as well. And then, of course, we're about a month away from publishing our 2024 team profile. So projected depth charts for every FBS team, point spread projections, power rankings, all kinds of great stuff. The biggest piece of my off season, really my entire year, is putting those team profiles together. So very much appreciate the support from Campus to Canton on the back end of that as well. And we are working very hard to get that to you in about a month. May 1st is our target date there. But enough of information about us. You, I'm sure, are here to hear what we have to say about spring practice and scrimmage updates. And starting at Ohio State, it was, I believe, Student Appreciation Day on Saturday. But of course, the media, and there are so many great reporters and team sites who were able to get an in-depth look at Ohio State on Saturday. And it was a big day, it sounds like, for Devin Brown, the veteran in that Ohio State quarterback room, the most experienced player with the Buckeyes. Wasn't given a real shot by most folks as, the expected starter for Ohio State in 2024, myself included. Will Howard, the transfer from Kansas State, overwhelmingly expected to eventually emerge as the starter, and perhaps he will. We are, of course, here on April 1st, and Ohio State doesn't kick off until the very end of August. So plenty of time for Howard to pick up ground and eventually pass Devin Brown. But it hasn't happened yet, at least according to Cameron Teague Robinson of The Athletic, who says, of course, they're just halfway through spring practice there in Columbus. And according to Teague Robinson, he says that, it's impossible to say one quarterback is taking the starting reps because there was a rotation with, the first team, second team, and the rest of the group. But Devin Brown, took some reps with the first team. Will Howard, of course, took some reps with the first team. Lincoln Kineholz, who we saw a little bit of an extended period for him, unfortunately due to an injury, but due to Brown in the bowl game for Ohio State. But at least as of right now, it sounds like that Brown, when he had the opportunity, or at least as of Saturday, I should say, when he had the opportunity, was the best of the bunch. So reading here from Robinson's piece says, I will say, however, that Brown was fantastic Saturday. He was the best quarterback on a day when multiple quarterbacks made eye-opening throws. Ryan Day was quoted here in the piece saying, we will take a look after this practice as we go into the last 2 weeks, which are probably the most important of spring practice, how we want to divvy up the reps. Up to this point, we just rolled them because you want to give everybody a chance to play with the 1s, 2s, and 3s and see what it looks like. Sometimes if somebody is getting reps with the 1s, 2s, and 3s, it can get a little tainted because of what's around them. Robinson mentioned, when the spring began, he, like me, like most folks out there, probably not Devin Brown, I think, but most everyone else said, didn't believe that Brown could win the battle. But now, and this again, reading from his piece, I think this battle is much closer than some people want to admit. Brown is very much in the running. That doesn't mean he's going to win it, of course. Howard has had a nice touchdown throw to Quinshon Judkins on a wheel route. He looks more comfortable in the offense than he did in the brief periods we saw in the first week, which you should expect from a veteran transfer like that. Again, Ryan Day quoted here. He had some really good throws. He's talking about Will Howard. He missed some throws as well, but I think it's slowing down for him. He does a good job in the pocket of having poise in there. You can't see the pocket or see the rush, but you can feel it, and I think he does. As his eyes get right and his feet time up with with that, you start to see some of those plays he made in a handle of the offense. Only a few weeks in there, I think we're seeing progress, but I would like to see him take the next step in the next 2 weeks. Beyond the quarterback battle, Jeremiah Smith has been the talk of spring practice for Ohio State. The 5-star true freshman wide receiver was the first to lose the black stripe on his helmet. Apparently that was a record for that since Ohio State implemented that practice as far as the quickest that a newcomer was able to shed that label and become quote unquote a real Buckeye. But Smith, whose hype has just continued to build since signing with Ohio State. He was making, highlight plays. There were videos tweeted out from, plenty of different sites who were there. But Teague Robinson noted that, he thought that the hype was going to be so out of control that Smith wouldn't be able to live up to it. But on Saturday, again, reading from the piece here, said Smith made some plays on Saturday that no freshman should ever make, including an unreal play on Denzel Burke and Caleb Downs, who were the best defensive backs at Ohio State, 2 of the best defensive backs in the country. But Day here quoted again from Robinson, Jeremiah has really stepped in and got his black stripe off real quick. He has a great approach. I'm going to be careful what I say but he's been a pleasure to watch, and we're excited about his future. Andy Enders of 11 Warriors noted that Smith might have had a better practice than any other player on the field for Ohio State on Saturday. He made multiple spectacular catches. Mentioned the one against Burke and Downs, of which Anders had embedded a tweet there that showed the highlight there. Also had a highlight of a leaping grab he made, pulled it from Jermaine Matthews Jr. that was impressive, led to oohs and ahs of those in attendance. Anders also had a little bit more to say about Brown and Will Howard, said that, and reading here from the piece, while Will Howard struggled throwing the ball further than 20 yards downfield on Saturday, Brown had the best all-around day of the quarterback. So in agreement there that Brown stood out. He scrambled to extend multiple plays, and his accuracy was the most consistent. Contrary to Howard, deep ball accuracy might have been the most impressive part of his game on Saturday. Speaking of Brown there. Anders also had some high marks, or had some kind words for freshman quarterback Julian Sayin, who said that the Ohio State freshman 5-star transfer from Alabama wasn't far behind Brown in terms of performance. So at least according to somebody who was there in person, Brown was the best quarterback of the day, maybe Sayin number 2. Howard struggled a little bit at times, especially with downfield passing. Sounds like Kindholds, according to both Robinson and Anders, among others, had some good throws. Also, Aaron Noland, it seems like, was perhaps the only quarterback who, had maybe a less than average day, but still has a very, very bright future there in Columbus, I'm sure. A few other observations here from Anders. Mentioned Emeka Egbuka. Let's not forget about him, one of the best wide receivers in college football, and probably still even as great as Smith may be, and as soon as he may make a major impact, Egbuka still probably, going to be the top target for Ohio State this year. Anders said Egbuka, projects as one of the best wide receivers in college football, and was making plays right alongside Smith on Tuesday, working both in the slot and on the outside. That's something I just always like to take note. Is a player locked into one specific role, specific position, or is he going to be moved around? And unsurprisingly, Emeka Egbuka is, a lot of experience there at Ohio State, should be able to handle being moved around the offense quite a bit. A few notes on a couple of defensive players. CJ Hicks, Ryan Day was quoted here, according to Anders. I think you're seeing CJ play fast. He really likes blitzing. You can tell he's quick in there, and he's doing a nice job timing up blitzes. Another year under his belt of experience being in a room with Tommy Eichenberg and Steele Chambers, watching how they did it. Now he's doing it. That Ohio State linebacker group, not necessarily a major question mark. We've talked before about how Ohio State is perhaps going to be the highest rated defense we've ever had at CFP Winning Edge, the way we calculate our roster strength ratings. But that is the least experienced spot with Eichenberg, with Chambers moving on. Hicks, we have penciled in as a starter. Cody Simon likely to start. But then, of course, Sonny Styles has been playing linebacker as well this spring, transitioning from safety earlier in his career. So, that group is going to be perhaps, a top 3 linebacker core in terms of raw talent. Those talent ratings coming out of high school from places like 247 Sports and Rivals and On3, which we keep track of. But good to note there that an area where, not every starter returns. In fact, no starters return, unlike the front 4 where everybody's back, the back 4 where everybody's back 5, depending on the alignment. So just good news there if you're an Ohio State fan, that what looks like potentially a weak spot on paper probably isn't going to be all that much. And then the defense as a whole, it sounds like, as much as there were positive reports about the quarterback play, positive reports about Smith, according to Anders, the defense won the day, and the pass rush did give the offensive line problems. There was a positive note about the offensive lineman that Seth McLaughlin, the Alabama transfer, who has become more of a known name than perhaps most centers, in part because he had some snapping issues at Alabama. According to Anders, did not struggle with snaps from his viewpoint. So good news there as well. Speaking of Alabama, as a bit of a story was developing late last week when we went live on Friday, we didn't mention much or really anything, I guess, on the Alabama scrimmage on Thursday. Saturday was not a day where really I don't think any FBS programs had a spring game on Saturday, but most, it seemed, had scrimmages of some sort. Alabama was a team that took the weekend off, but had its scrimmage on Thursday. Reporters were not able to view that scrimmage. So, the actual blow by blow of reps and who had the best day and who didn't, we're not going to get that out of Tuscaloosa, although we did get some quotes from Kalen DeBoer, who was very high on Jalen Milroe. Reading a few different roundups from Thursday. Joe Gaither of Bama Central, also Nick Alvarez of AL.com, Will Miller of Bama Central as well, all had some quotes from DeBoer following the scrimmage. Talking about Milroe here, Jalen Milroe has been super consistent. Quoting DeBoer, he's done a good job, I think, of just playing ball. Continued, he said, I think he's getting more and more comfortable with the offense every day, especially when it comes to the pass game. DeBoer also mentioned the running back group and running back rotation there. DeBoer said he likes the diversity, the skill sets of Jam Miller, Justice Haynes, Richard Young, and Daniel Hill. Quoting here, for these guys, there's a downhill physicality that I think they really have, but they have the ability to also make the jump cut, get to the outside, turn on the speed in the backfield, come out, and we just find a way to get them touches, and that's what our offense really does, is find a way to get the ball to its best players in space. I speculated a little bit on Friday because Will Nixon, one of DeBoer's former Washington Huskies, has entered the transfer portal. Speculated, could he end up in Tuscaloosa, as deep and as talented as that running back group is? There's at least, doesn't sound like right now, a primary ball carrier, bell cow type, somebody who's going to get a heavy workload. And Nixon, has a receiver background. So could he come in and make, a role for himself, whatever that could be? That's, again, speculation on my part, but I wouldn't be shocked if it happens. But the most notable thing that came out of Thursday's practice, and you probably heard about it already, wide receiver Jalen Hale suffered what DeBoer called a significant knee injury. So usually when I hear significant injury, you think the worst, you think ACL, you think torn ligament, out for the season. We don't have full details publicly, but the follow-up from DeBoer, follow-up from Hale, who did leave the Alabama facility in an ambulance, according to reports on Tuesday, announced on social media on Saturday that he was released from the hospital. This is from Carter Bonds of 247 Sports, who said that Hale will miss the rest of spring practice to recover, and it's a little unclear whether or not he will miss time going into the fall. It does sound like, and this is according to Joe Gaither of Bama Central, DeBoer said, an update on Jalen Hale. He did have a significant knee injury. He'll be down for the spring, but there's some evaluation that will still take place to kind of figure out what that timeline will be as far as the rest of the year and so forth. So Hale said, it's not as bad as it could be. So, that makes me think, okay, not an ACL, but there could be worse than a torn ACL. You could certainly tear multiple things. But whatever it is, hopefully Jalen Hale is getting back and healthy sooner rather than later. Hopefully we will see him back this fall. And, hopefully it won't miss any time. But if he does, certainly hope for a speedy recovery for him. Elsewhere in the SEC, Georgia had a scrimmage on Saturday as well. Most scrimmage reports, spring reports, just from practices in general, will say, oh, the defense was ahead of the offense. It seems like that's 9 out of every 10 practice reports that I read or scrimmage reports that I read. Georgia, though, according to Dogs HQ, is one of the few places where the offense is ahead of the defense. On Saturday, there was an inter-squad scrimmage in which the staff there at Dogs HQ said they continue to hear great things about quarterback Carson Beck. That should come as no surprise. He is the Heisman Trophy favorite. Apparently, he had a great day on Saturday, according to their sources. And reading here from this update, it said, at this point, there's almost nothing the defense can do to get him off balance, and that shows in these settings. But that comes with a little bit of a caveat. Apparently, also, the defense was without some of its best players on Saturday, including Malachi Starks, Neil Mondon, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, and Christian Miller. So, any positive in spring comes with its negative. It's a bit of a zero-sum game anyway. But unsurprisingly, the Georgia offense should be one of the best and most efficient in the country. Carson Beck should be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So not a shock that he is playing well, even against one of the most talented defensive units in the country. But who is stepping up and making plays for Beck? It sounds like, again, according to Dogs HQ, there have been some real positive notes on wide receivers Arian Smith and Dylan Bell, also tight end Oscar Delp, among others. Mike Griffith of Dog Nation passed along some quotes from head coach Kirby Smart, specifically giving some insight on Delp's leadership and sort of how he is stepping up as sort of the next man up, with Brock Bowers moving on at tight end. But the situation there at Georgia and with Delp here, quoting the piece from Griffith on Dog Nation, Oscar is real physical. He does things his way. He is not Brock. He doesn't try to be Brock. He is a quiet leader, similar to Brock, but he is really physical. He is tough. He knows the work ethic it requires. The guy is taking a lot of reps since being here. He has been durable. He is doing a good job leading in that room, as well as Lawson Lucky, another tight end. Of course, keep in mind that Benjamin Urasek is going to be joining this tight end room this summer, transfer from Stanford, one of the most productive tight ends in the country, coming off an injury, but we've seen him at his best. He could certainly give a real boost in that, being able to pick up some of that production that was lost with Brock Bowers moving on to the NFL. But at least as of right now, Delp has a little bit of a head start and perhaps will be able to carry that over into the fall. But we will, of course, follow up with any notes there. Brooks Austin of Dogs Daily highlighted a few players whose stock has risen this spring. That includes running back Roderick Robinson, who was also mentioned in that Dogs HQ piece. Offensive lineman center Jared Wilson, likely to be the starter there. And edge Samuel Impemba has also had a very, very strong spring, according to Austin. At Arkansas, where there was not only media availability, but the fans were able to come in and get an up close and personal look at Arkansas. It sounds like there's going to be that opportunity several times this spring for the Hogs, who ran 152 plays on Saturday in that open scrimmage, according to Jackson Fuller of the Fort Smith Southwest Times record. That is a mouthful, but Jackson Fuller does a great job covering Arkansas for that paper. Quarterback Talon Green led the first team offense on touchdown drives against the number one defense in each of his first two series, according to Fuller. That did include a 24-yard touchdown pass to tight end Luke Haas at the very early portion of the scrimmage. Andrew Armstrong and Jaden Wilson, receivers. Armstrong, top receiver from last year for Arkansas, but also one of the best, certainly for the Hogs. High expectations was out on Saturday. That allowed some extra opportunities for others, and it sounds like Isaiah Satenga took the most from that opportunity. He had 83 yards on 5 catches, including a 33-yard touchdown strike from Green. But the Arkansas defense was disruptive, and after those first 2 scoring drives, it sounded like Green was a little bit inconsistent, a little up and down, according to Fuller. Completed fewer than 50% of his passes. Also was intercepted once by Hudson Clark. I just finished the Arkansas team profile late last week, and a name that had kind of escaped my notice, I think, when it was first announced that he was transferring to Arkansas, and perhaps a name that few are unfamiliar with out there because he is a transfer from the FCS level, but Anton Juncaj, Juncaj, and my apologies if I mispronounced that, but an edge defender, pass rusher from Albany, where Jared Verse was prior to transferring to Florida State. Not saying that he's going to be the second next coming of Jared Verse, but if you look at the the number of pressures that he has accumulated there in his career over the last couple of years, it's similar in numbers to the ones that Verse was putting up. It also sounds like that Juncaj just had a big day, was part of the Arkansas defense, totaling 5 sacks. He had multiple tackles for loss, I believe. And according to Fuller, there probably would have been more sacks, more tackles for loss had it been a real game setting. But still, good start for Green, a little bit inconsistent thereafter as the defense really started to pick up the pressure, it sounds like. A couple of other notes: the running back rotation included Rashad Devin getting the start in that scrimmage alongside Green. And also he had the heaviest workload, the highest number of carries in the scrimmage. Jaquindon Jackson split time with the first team, but sounds like was second behind Devin in that pecking order. And then got a little bit of clarification on a former offensive line starter, Andrew Chamblee, who entered the transfer portal late last week. He had left the team on March 5th, I believe was expected to retire, but has instead entered the transfer portal. So could certainly provide some experience, some depth, maybe even be a starter elsewhere, having played starting snaps for Arkansas last season. At UCF, Matt Marshall of the Orlando Sentinel was on hand for the 100 or so plays that the Knights had in their first scrimmage on Saturday. Passed along a couple of quotes, including quarterback KJ Jefferson, who had his first appearance at UCF's home stadium. Said, it's live football now, so we can see who can make guys miss, get the ball to our playmakers' hands, and make plays. We want to see who can make guys miss and who can turn a 5-yard gain into a 60-yard gain. Head coach Gus Malzahn was complimentary of KJ Jefferson, said, quote, KJ has an excellent command of the offense. The game is slow for him, and he knows there's nothing like getting out there, getting the coaches on the sideline, and being out there taking charge of an offense. He did an excellent job of moving and directing the offense. At Florida, Zach Abolverdi of Gators Online passed along some notes from the Gators' first scrimmage of spring practice. They're about halfway through. It was the 8th practice overall for Florida this year. Head coach Billy Napier was quoted by Abolverdi saying, overall, it was back and forth. I would say the defense probably got the best of the offense, but there were bright spots on both sides. One of those bright spots, it sounds like, is wide receiver Chimere Dike, who has transferred from Wisconsin, reunited with Graham Mertz. The two of them had a strong connection in 2021 and 2022, as Mertz mentioned here, quoting him. in the piece said, you go back like 2021 or 2022, that film, just go watch all of Wisconsin's third downs that were targeted to him, talking about DK. We built up that chemistry when he came in there, then obviously came down here and you build chemistry with everybody. He's talking about Ricky Pearsall here. Ricky was really using that same spot where you go, or where you get into a third down and your slot receivers are going to go win. We got a lot of guys that can play that slot position for us, but I think Chim is doing a great job of being the veteran guy that's played, that's won one-on-ones versus the best DBs in the country, that has that experience he can rely on. It's going to be awesome. So apparently in the scrimmage on Saturday, Mertz and DK connected on multiple big plays, including a long touchdown pass. There was also what would have been a long pass completion had it not gone slightly out of bounds, but according to Verde, was Mertz also threw a beautiful pass to DK that he held in, but just out of bounds. But DK, it sounds like, has really established himself as one of the top receivers there for Florida. Eugene Wilson has, had a major impact as a true freshman, probably going to be most expect the top target, but Mertz and DK have a longer history, and it sounds like that chemistry is carried over despite not playing together last season. Everybody wants to know about freshman 5-star quarterback DJ Lagway, who there were some hoping when he signed on the dotted line that maybe he might actually be able to eventually beat out Graham Mertz for that starting quarterback job for Florida. Sounds like he has a bit of a way to go. Quoting Billy Napier here from Verde, said, today was really good for him. He had to play the situations as they arose throughout the scrimmage. I think the next big step for him is the game management piece. I actually asked him on the field today, did you play poker growing up? Did you actually play cards growing up? If you played Texas Hold'em and you get a 3 and a 4, you fold your cards and you go on to the next hand. He obviously didn't play poker growing up, but sometimes you get dealt a bad hand and you got to learn how to play the next hand, play the next play, managing the situation. Think of your decision-making relative to the game and the team within that setting. I think he's done a really good job in a practice setting, but today was new for him. And what he's referring to here apparently was a bit of a rough scrimmage for Lagway. He practiced with the second team offense, according to Verde, but threw an interception early in the scrimmage, had trouble apparently shaking it off after making that turnover. So, moving on, play the next play, seems like it's going to be the most important thing for DJ Lagway, at least according to his head coach. And there were some notes there. One of the things that perhaps will help him that was noted in the piece was the update in the ability for coaches to communicate with players on the field. So there was a little bit of discussion with that. Quoting Napier again here from the piece, said, I think for DJ, that's just a huge advantage, the ability to talk to the quarterback all the way up to 15 seconds, right? It's helped him play cleaner as a young player. Every day is a new learning experience for him, but he's a quick learner, and he did a lot of good today. I think he made some plays with his feet, played with the twos most of the day. I think that's where he's at. I think he's got physical talent. He's picked it up quickly, and now it's just about the game management piece. But we haven't talked very much about the in-helmet communication, but I'm curious, will we see that impact scoring this year in college football? There was a ton of talk last season about the changes in the clock rules and would that have a major impact on scoring. Scoring has gone down pretty consistently. I don't have the numbers right in front of me today, but that's been, I believe, a fairly steady thing over the last decade or so when we were at the height of up-tempo offenses and just huge amounts of scoring. There was a real uptick, but it's been trending downward for the most part, like I said, over the past decade or so. And then last year continued, and the clock rules were potentially part of that. But I'm reading more and more about up-tempo offenses. probably not going to talk about them in depth today, but read more about Pitt and its up-tempo offense. Kentucky is really turning up the tempo compared to previous years, it sounds like, at least through spring practice. So as we see more of those types of offense, maybe things are trending, a little quicker, time between plays, more plays, things like that. That maybe will help swing things a little bit in the other direction. But also, if players, quarterbacks are able to hear extended, observations from coaches as they are getting lined up for a play. And there's a little bit of a trade-off there, right? If you go faster, you're not going to have that much time to communicate. So, maybe it doesn't, maybe it evens out a little bit. But I don't know. It's just, it's something to think about a little bit. I'm not going to incorporate it into any of projections that I make probably, but I just wonder. I wonder if we might see a little bit of an uptick there. All right, little bit more here. We're going to try to run through some notes from other places in college football. Michigan, Notre Dame, BYU, Louisville, and TCU all had things of note. We'll see if at the end, definitely want to make sure we are able to spend time on our team of the day, Air Force, but have some updates from places like UAB, Northern Illinois, FAU as well. But starting off here, Michigan has its new defensive line coach. Of course, we mentioned it very briefly a couple of weeks ago. There was a change there after an arrest to a recently hired defensive line coach there at Michigan. But the Wolverines and head coach Sharon Moore went out and grabbed a sitting FBS coordinator and a new recently hired FBS coordinator at Memphis, Lou Esposito, who is a Memphis alum. So, Esposito had been a successful defensive coordinator at Western Michigan, was highly respected there, stayed on after the last head coaching change, but returned to his alma mater about 3 months ago. And Memphis is basically, they are in the middle of spring practice. They've been up and going for, a week to 10 days, something along those lines. And they are now without their defensive coordinator because he is moving on to be the defensive line coach at Michigan. So when the national champions come calling, it's difficult to say no, even if you have to leave your alma mater and even if you're taking a demotion in terms of title. But Lou Esposito is a quality defensive coach, certainly has a long track record as a coordinator, but is going to be the defensive line coach in Ann Arbor moving forward. At Notre Dame, there were several reports, among them from Brian Driscoll of Irish Breakdown, who was on hand for an interview with running back Jeremiah Love, who has been playing quite a bit of wide receiver this spring. In the back and forth, have a few quotes here from Love passed on by Driscoll. Said, "It started as soon as spring ball started. I'm trying to take this into the season. We're trying to take this into the season. Right now, I'm just playing slot, trying to get a foundation at receiver so that I can move back and forth between receiver and running back if needed. I would say I'm very good out in space, so putting me in the slot or putting me at receiver and trying to get me the ball in space fits my play style. I like that they're doing that, but I also want to play running back at the same time. Spring, I'm going to use this to set my foundation at receiver so that in the season they can put together packages for me so that I can go out into the slot and know what I'm doing and be able to run good routes and make plays." Love says that he has been in meetings with both the wide receiver groups and the running back groups. Another quote here, "I meet with the running backs and the receivers. Like today, I started off practice with the running backs. I did the first section with them, and then I went over to the receivers and went through the rest of practice with them." He continued and gave more detail about how his day broke down. But let's not forget, Notre Dame is making a transition at offensive coordinator. Mike Denbrock getting hired from LSU. So even though Audric Estime is moving on to the NFL, player who had over 200 carries, 1,341 yards, and 18 touchdowns last year, Jeremiah Love stepping up as the leading returning running back, 71 carries, 385 yards, and 1 touchdown. not necessarily expecting that he would have gotten the same level of workload anyway, but it certainly sounds like, he's not going to come close to that, in part because he's going to be playing, wide receiver at times as well, or at least, working on the ability to do that. So does that mean that Jadarian Price is going to be more in line for those traditional running back one reps? Time will tell. But there was an interesting note in the piece to me about, the new offensive system. And the question was, does playing in Mike Denbrock's offense give more space? And Love answered, most definitely a lot more room. Last year, we were always in 12 or 13, talking about personnel, 12 personnel, one receiver, two tight ends. Excuse me, one back, two tight ends, or 13, one back, three tight ends. Continuing here, he says, now we've got a lot more room to do things. So fewer tight ends, it sounds like, on the field, perhaps for Notre Dame, more receivers, and at least one, running back who's got some receiver reps in there as well, and perhaps an expanded role. One other note coming out of Notre Dame, cornerback Clarence Lewis entered the transfer portal late last week. He was maybe not expected to start, but probably going to be a major contributor at that cornerback position, which is now certainly even this spring a little lighter in terms of depth with the injury to Benjamin Morrison that we talked about last week. At BYU, BYU did not have a spring game this year, but Mitch Harper of KSL Sports passed along that the 15th and final BYU spring practice that the Cougars had on Saturday included a 30-minute media viewing period. He says that they were able to watch 4 different quarterbacks throughout that particular time period, and it began with Gary Bohannon, followed by Jake Ratzliff. The 2 quarterbacks apparently are still, quote, neck and neck in the competition, and it is expected to carry into fall camp. But Harper said, in his opinion, though Bohannon was the best quarterback during that observation windows and appeared to be with the first team offense, also led a touchdown drive, Jake Ratzliff, who on Saturday, it sounds like his one drive that was open to the media was a little inconsistent, started with a penalty, ended with a failed field goal attempt. Nevertheless, sounds like Ratzliff still should be considered the favorite here. Ben Criddle, also of KSL, passed along some quotes from Kalani Sitake, the head coach, said, Jake knows the offense a lot better than Gary does, and he's a lot more comfortable with how offensive coordinator Aaron Roderick calls it, so he's farther ahead. But you can see the ability with both these guys, and the competition has been really nice for these guys to go get after it. But Criddle said, simply stated, if the season started today or even next week, Ratzliff would be the starter, and it could be argued that the starting spot is him to lose. Harper, who had a post-spring depth chart projection piece, he listed Ratzliff as the projected starter, kind of gave a breakdown of what gives him the edge. That quote from Sitake about him being, ahead of Bohannon was certainly part of it. Ratzliff did start 4 games last season. Of course, they were all losses for the Cougars, but that experience is a big jumping off point for him. Also, apparently, Ratzliff had 0 interceptions in the 15 spring practices this year. And Harder noted that Bohannon started spring ball slow. There were days early on where his surgically repaired shoulder was sore, but he did settle in and played better, it sounds like, according to reports, as spring went on, but perhaps hasn't fully closed that gap. Harper also gave a rundown of the rest of the offensive depth chart as he projects it. Not surprisingly, LJ Martin topped the running back list, followed by Miles Davis and Hinckley Rapati. At wide receiver, the starters were Chase Roberts, Darius Lassiter, and Cody Epps. Former wide receiver Keanu Hill is slotted in ahead of freshman Reiner Swanson at tight end. And Harper noted that JoJo Phillips seems poised for a breakout season as a redshirt freshman. And then Keelan Marion and Parker Kingston expected to be with Phillips among the second group of receivers. But out of all the positions on BYU's offense, this, according to Harper, he said the receivers are in the best spot heading into the summer, and that will only improve because they are adding returning missionary Cody Hagan as well as Tay Nakua in June. At Louisville, Matthew Magavich of Louisville Report was on hand for an open practice over the weekend where the defense, again, was ahead of the offense. But there was a standout wide receiver, according to Magavich. Jaden Thompson was someone who shined for the offense in the final period of the day, made a few plays through the air, reading here from the piece, including another red zone touchdown in the back of the end zone. Apparently, the running game struggled to get going. The defense, according to Magavich, was almost the running backs were almost immediately met by a linebacker anytime they got past the offensive line. But Penny Boone did have a nice bulldoze and spin that would have been a touchdown. Magavich also passed along in a different piece some quotes from head coach Jeff Brom, who said, well, I like our defense. Without question, we have a lot of depth. In the secondary, for sure, without question, there's depth at the corner position and at safety. We're pressing that four on the defensive line, even though there's some guys out now. When it's all said and done for fall camp, we'll have depth there. I think we have some linebackers that have played quite a bit with some youth mixed in, which is good. We've thrown a lot at them. The package is not exactly the same. It's going to add some new wrinkles, the ability to get after the quarterback and create turnovers. We've got to continue to press that forward. That has looked good to this point, so I like it. Our defense should be a strength. I expect it to be a strength. We've got to continue to press forward with that because I think we have quite a bit of depth and quite a bit of really good playmakers. And that quote sort of stuck out to me because Louisville defensively right now looks like they're going to be a top 10 team as far as our roster strength ratings go. And that might be a little surprise because when we think Louisville, especially if you're a CFF minded person, you think offense and you think that, receiver group in Jeff Brom's offensive system has been consistently very productive, very consistent. So, a lot of the talk is, all right, is it Ja'Cory Brooks? Is it Colin Lacey? Who's going to be the biggest impact receiver? Will the tight end position, which for a long time, especially at Purdue, had been so good under Brom, will Mark Redmond, him coming in the summer, will he be able to step up, or is it going to be another transfer, Jaleel Skinner or Isaiah Cummings? Are those guys going to step up and be the most productive? But this defense, on paper looks really, really good. 8 actually full-time starters return. Right now we've got 7 of those guys penciled in as expected starters, but the incoming transfers, probably 2 of which are going to start in the secondary. There are 8 incoming transfers among defensive backs, something like that. Crazy number. But the front 4 is going to be one of the highest rated in the country. Right now, looks like the defensive line group is a top 2 unit in our position strength ratings. This Louisville defense, again, on paper, looks really, really good and played quite well last year. They were a top 10 team in our defensive team performance. They were 27th against the pass, 20th against the run, 16th overall. So, it's not like it's just on paper, but they seemingly, an experienced group and added some talent, some depth through the transfer portal with so many new faces on offense. Looks like only 2 full-time starters coming back on offense, might have as many as 8 or 9 first-year transfers starting on offense. Quarterback Tyler Shuck, running back Penny Boone, mentioned Brooks, mentioned Lacey, probably 3 starters on the offensive line at least. The defense, Louisville might lean on the defense a little bit early as some of the kinks get worked out offensively, but they're in good position, I think, to do so. Louisville's a really, really intriguing team for me. 10-win team, but benefited from a very manageable schedule last season. This team, I think, is a good bit better on defense. I haven't put a lot of time into thinking game by game just yet. I'll have that a little bit more once we get the individual point spread projections and all the schedules in our team profiles. So we'll be talking a lot more about that next month probably. But Louisville defense specifically looks very, very good early on. Okay, finish up here for today with some notes on TCU. Jeremy Clark of Horned Frog Blitz was on hand late last week for a spring practice update, media observation there. He said that, of course, with Josh Hoover out this spring due to injury, Vanderbilt quarterback transfer Ken Seals and freshman Haas Hidgeny are getting an extended opportunity to show what they can do. The two both had their moments, even though in this particular viewing period, there weren't as many downfield completions as there had been in a previous practice. Seals, it sounds like, showed a good connection, especially in a 7-on-7 period with Savion Williams and JP Richardson. He also added a long run during one of the team sessions and was very consistent during the team sessions, completed 5 of 5 pass attempts at one point. Hidgeny had a solid day as well and connected with Eric McAllister and Blake Knoll for some good passes in a 7-on-7 period. At running back, Cam Cook got the bulk of the first team reps at running back, and Trey Sanders and Trent Battle were mostly with behind Cook in the pecking order, but performed well. Also, there were a lot of positive reports about receivers, even though the numbers were low. Dylan Wright is limited right now. JoJo Earl and Dozie Ezukanma have missed a couple of practices last week. But Eric McAllister stepped up, took a lot of reps at the Z position and performed well. And then few quick notes here. Clark said that Jordan Bailey may be the most improved player so far. He says that Major Everhart has also had a huge spring camp and continues to make plays, and that Jack Betch had the play of the day when he caught a pass in the flat, turned upfield, and completely hurdled Lamarion James. So that's consistent with some other reports that we've read where, Betch seemingly has made a couple of, plays of the day so far, but that receiver core, a lot of guys are involved and showing what they can do in a variety of ways. Finishing up here, our team of the day is Air Force. And Air Force is a team that is already done with spring practice. They're also a team that it's really kind of difficult to get a read on for a variety of reasons. It's always tricky to get a lot of usable information out of head coach Troy Calhoun when he meets with the media, even though Air Force does get quite good coverage from Brent Brigerman of the Gazette specifically, others out there close to the program as well. So certainly not their fault. Troy Calhoun is one who keeps things, very close to the vest most of the time. Sometimes, you could say he offers some misdirection on, some things. There were times where we thought that Zach Larrier, the starting quarterback last year, was going to be out for an extended time due to injury. And then all of a sudden, he's there on the field, ready to start pregame. There have been other times when we've heard, so-and-so, we don't hear anything about an injury and then a player's out for an extended period of time. So, that can be tough. But then also Air Force is among the most extreme on the low end of returning production. Bill Connolly at ESPN, they're 134th in their returning production numbers. They have been 134th most of the offseason for us, but they actually right this second are 133rd. So still, one of the very lowest, but not exactly dead last for us in our most up-to-date numbers. So still a team that is returning or going to be relying on, I should say, a lot of new faces. Troy, by the way, most recently is down at 134. So they were able to pass Air Force on the lowest end in our most recent updates. But Larrier is gone. Backup quarterback Jensen Jones is gone. That leaves John Busha as the most experienced quarterback on the roster. He completed 9 of 19 passes for 152 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception last year. Of course, Air Force doesn't throw it a ton, but Busha had 13 carries for 11 yards on the ground and 1 touchdown. I will admit, I don't know a ton about him, and replacing Zach Larrier, who was maybe the fastest player on the Air Force roster. He was maybe the fastest player in the Mountain West, was actually a conference champion hurdler, I believe, but track and field performer for several years prior to becoming the starting quarterback there at Air Force. But Busha, according to Brigman, entered spring practice as the clear leader at quarterback and finished everything in spring ball, how reps were allocated, being removed from the field during live tackling scrimmages, according to Brigman, pointed to Busha holding that spot. So expect him to be the number 1 quarterback for the Falcons this year. But running back, of course, an area that's consistently been very, very productive. Emmanuel Michel last year, 935 yards on the ground, 11 touchdowns. He has left the academy via transfer. Larrier had 600 yards and 6 touchdowns last season. John Lee Eldridge, big play performer, averaged over 7 yards per carry, had 6 touchdowns and nearly 600 yards on the ground. But then also Owen Burke, who had 3 touchdowns and over 400 yards rushing. Jensen Jones, the backup quarterback, 4 touchdowns, 233 yards on the ground. All of those guys are gone. Only Dylan Carson, who was 4th on the team in rushing last year. He is the only among those top 6 rushers from last season to return. Carson had 493 yards and 2 touchdowns, did average over 7 yards per carry, as did Aiden Calvert, who is also expected to take on a bigger workload. Calvert had 24 attempts for 181 yards, did not have a touchdown on the ground last season. But both of those players are back and expected to take on bigger roles, and they were among the players who Brigman quoted in the most recent write-up, who were talking about, we've lost a lot of players, but they make the argument that the guys who return are just as talented, maybe even more, so as the players who left. So Dylan Carson said in the piece, quote, "I know a lot of people are saying we're rebuilding, but honestly, just a reload." Calvert said, quote, "We have a lot of young guys that have the same talent, if not better talent." And then receiver Kate Harris said, "I feel like we definitely can match some of the talent we had from previous years. The thing is inexperience, but we've got a lot of talented dudes who just need to figure it out." And, Air Force traditionally usually does figure it out. There is some experience at receiver. Harris being back, Jared Rosnos, who's actually the leading receiver last year with 12 catches, 374 yards, and 3 touchdowns, all of which led the Falcons, is also back. Brandon Ingle is back as well. So the top 3 receivers in terms of yards, all returning for Air Force. But new quarterback, several new players getting bigger roles in the backfield, and then every offensive lineman who started a game, which was 7 of them, all are gone. Every offensive lineman, if our returning production information is correct, who had more than 40 snaps is gone. So a lot of inexperience on the Air Force offensive line, perhaps a lot of talented players who now are just getting an opportunity to show what they can do. Air Force has a deep roster. They can carry more at Air Force, Army, and Navy than they can elsewhere in FBS college football. So, it's not uncommon for Air Force to be able to roll through and just, still continue to produce some of the best rushing offenses in college football. Wouldn't be a shock if Air Force is in contention for a similar win total this year. They won 9 games, started out 9-0, right? But Air Force had a huge start to the season, tailed off there towards the end, finished 5-3 in Mountain West play, 9-4 overall. But a team that consistently is able to, despite having an inexperienced roster, play at a high level. And defensively, Air Force is going to have to replace its top 6 tacklers. Really, the only area of experience, the most experienced unit, I should say, on the defensive side of the ball is in the secondary, where multiple starters return. They also get Camby Goff back from injury. He is going to be available, which is great news for I'm sorry, I lost my place here. Goff was not expected to be able to come back, but because he was injured in week 1 last season, was actually able to take a turn back semester for Air Force that did give him that extra year of eligibility. So he's going to be able to return, is back on campus at the academy this spring, went through spring practice, looks good and healthy according to reports. And then nose guard Peyton Zdroik, who is one of the only returning starters up front for Air Force. He actually is not on campus, not at the academy this spring going through spring practice, but was doing a turnback semester this spring, which is going to be able to allow him to play in not only 2024, but 2025 as well. So a little bit of good news there in terms of experience for Air Force, who, of course, despite having more players available than most FBS teams, are not able to add transfers coming in, not able to use the transfer portal. So getting some experienced players, guys who've had production, who've played a lot of football for Air Force in the past. And as we said, those are fewer and far between, with them ranking 132nd in our overall adjusted returning production, 132nd on the offensive side of the ball, 131st on defense, 133rd overall right now. Air Force is going to be relying on a lot of new players. So getting Goff back is huge. Getting Zdroik back is big, and a little bit of experience in the secondary potentially could help, Air Force avoid a major step back defensively, because last year Air Force 35th in our overall team performance on the defensive side of the ball, 17th against the run, 32nd against the pass. But both starting linebackers are gone. Only one starting defensive linebacker, Zdroik, expected to return. Multiple starters in the secondary, Jabari Bellamy and Jerome Gallen Jr., and then add Camby Goff as well, who was one of the best, former all-conference vote getter for Air Force in years past. Getting him back, you assume they're going to be able to run the football well, do have some depth at receiver, so there's still some hope that Air Force will be able to move the football, put points on the board. But if they can lean on that, rare experience defensively, Air Force is still going to be a very competitive team, as they always are. Looking at the schedule very quickly, Air Force starts with FCS opponent Merrimack in week 1. They start Mountain West play early with a week 2 home date against San Jose State. Travel to Baylor on September 14th, then have an off week. Go to Wyoming for another early Mountain West showdown, and then host Navy on October 5th. Take a trip to New Mexico, then host Colorado State October 19th. They're off again prior to the trip to Army at West Point November 2nd. And then they round out with 3 Mountain West games in 4 weeks. It's Fresno State at home against Oregon State from the Pac-12. Pac-2 doesn't count in Mountain West standings, but playing a mostly Mountain West conference schedule this year. Then at Nevada and at San Diego State. So back-to-back road games in the final 2 weeks of the season. It's a difficult schedule, not a ton, really no automatic losses, but very few automatic wins either. Air Force, very dangerous team as always, I would expect, despite the lack of returning production, but a schedule that is, maybe not super scary, but also, fairly difficult. Not too many just automatic W's that you can go through and write down as you go week by week. So very interesting team, a difficult team for us to project usually, but by this time, Troy Calhoun and that Air Force coaching staff and program, deserves the benefit of the doubt. So I don't expect a major drop off. So that will wrap it up for us today. Thank you as always for joining us, whether you're joining us live. For those of you who commented in the show on YouTube, Gary, Felix, Danny, thank you for that. I need to get better at responding to questions and comments as they come. Gary says, quite the situation with that QB room in Tuscaloosa. Might be better passers on the roster, but Milroe is the leader in the locker room. Got to figure out how to make that dynamic work. I'm a big believer in Jalen Milroe. I think the offense will be a little bit different, but I think that Kalen DeBoer impresses me as someone who is able to find the ways to get his best players in a position to be successful. I think he'll do that with Milroe. So even if he's been a little less consistent as a passer, certainly can throw a deep ball, but I think they're going to build that offense around Jalen Milroe, and I think we're going to see a very good season offensively for Alabama. Danny says, are there any show notes or cliff notes of this show posted anywhere? Trying to watch and listen, but my teething 4-month-old is not cooperating. Sorry, Danny. We will try to see what we can do in the future, but as of right now, this is the program we've got. Big Time Browns, thank you. Great show. Thanks for doing what you do. Really appreciate it. And on that note, thank you all for joining us, whether it's live or catching a replay on YouTube. We very much appreciate it. If you do join us there, please give the show a like. Help us keep it going. Bring this information to you 3 times a week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday is our current schedule. As we get a little deeper into the season, we'll hope to get back to 5 days a week. But again, this month of April, we are working on those team profiles. So do keep an ear out. We might have to, especially maybe in that last week of April, scale back a show or two just to try to use as much of that available time as possible, because we do want to get those team profiles up and available to our All-22 and C2C Winning Edge members at campus2canton.com as close to on schedule as we possibly can. So do be flexible with us. We very much appreciate that. Very much appreciate your support at campus2canton.com, on the Campus 2 Canton YouTube channel, and for joining us live wherever you do 3 days a week here on Good Morning College Football. Again, I'm Nicholas Ian Allen of CFP Winning Edge and Campus 2 Canton. Hope everyone has a wonderful Monday. Happy April Fool's Day, and we will get back to you on Wednesday with a roundup of any other news we're able to come across between now and then. So have a great day.